Anyway, we're live right now with some friends here. We have Zoe and Athena someplace, and Mark and Joe and Terry, and so this Wednesday night used to be live all the time, and for the last maybe 8 months now, maybe 9 months, we've been just doing it online, or actually more than that. We were doing it on Zoom, and then we switched over to Insight Timer. And so now we're kind of thinking about doing some live things, and that's what we're doing tonight. We're experimenting with doing a live class here. Hi Chuck, how you doing? We missed you last week. Hi Janine, hello. Thanks for being here, everybody. We have 8 people online, and I'm sorry about the glasses. My screen is so far away. We generally have 40 or 50 people, so we'll kind of move along here and let people join in as we go. And I'll be speaking to the people online, and then of course the people here, including Zoe here. And last week we talked about hindrances, and I mentioned that the hindrances were really in for the most part emotions, emotions that we have, the desires and the restlessness and worry. Doubt is an emotion. The only one that might not be in a direct emotion, like a state, although it is a state, is sloth and torpor, and that fatigue. And that fatigue, especially when we look at it as being like a physical fatigue, we have trouble kind of determining whether it's actual a state that's in the body, like an emotion. But when we get fatigued physically, that leads to like a drowsiness or sometimes a dark mood, and so it definitely kind of lend itself to an emotion. And so we have to refresh our memory, the hindrances of Theravada Buddhism are desire, aversion or ill will, or anger, we could call it anger. Sloth and torpor, the fatigue of mental and physical, slowness. It could also be boredom. And restlessness and worry. And then the 5th hindrance is doubt. Doubt in the practice, doubt in the Buddhist teachings, doubt in, that we'll ever get anywhere with this stuff, that just not trusting, not having faith in it, that kind of thing. And so I'd like to kind of continue and talk about emotions in general. First, a little bit about emotions from the Buddhist perspective. The word emotions, of course, is an English word. It's not anything that the definitions or the words describing emotions were primarily mind states that the Buddha used, translating to English using mind states. But he also talked about feelings, and a lot of times people refer to these feelings as emotions. In the West, we certainly do. When people say, I feel sad, or I feel happy, I feel up, or I feel down, it's just, we put that feeling tone into it, that feeling word, actually. And so, but the Buddha made it really quite simple. He said that the feelings that we have is our direct response to sensual stimuli. So the things that we see and hear and smell and taste, touch, even the things that we think about, cause a chemical reaction within us that causes this feeling. And it's either positive or we could say pleasant or unpleasant. And then he also talked about a third feeling, which is neutral. And the neutral is very much, in many cases, what he's saying is that there's always a feeling present. So even right now, we could ask ourselves, is there a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling, or is it just kind of neutral? Just assuming that there's something there. You know, and if we did that, and the reason he put it in these three categories is because of the mindfulness practices, you know, that we have, so that we can actually use that in our practice, asking ourselves what feeling is happening. And sometimes I've heard teachers call these things feeling tones, you know. I just call them feelings. That's what the Buddha called them. And he also talked about mind states. You know, this word that we used a couple of times already. And mind states are really an accumulation of these feelings that kind of settle. We could picture it as settling into the body. Like it settles in, and an accumulation of feelings is going to create something, you know, an emotion, or what the Buddha called mind states. So if there's a lot of negativity during our day, we're going to create this mind state. And these mind states we could call emotions. We could look at them as emotions. And I'll start using that word emotions, you know, as we explain this and as we use it in our meditation, just so that there's no confusion. And there's just hundreds and hundreds of different words that we can use to express or talk about our different emotions that we have. You know, we can be sad, or happy. We can have lots of different mixtures of emotions. Grief, for example, is a mixture of it could be a mixture of a lot of things, actually. But there could be anger, there could be fear, there could be you know, sorrow, and you know, of course, sadness and depression, and all these things, all these words that we could kind of accumulate and make this emotion soup out of, you know, out of all these different ways that we can express emotions. But the important thing to realize is that we notice when we have these emotions in us. So, you know, as meditators, it's always like, how can we use this practice of meditation or this practice of mindfulness and use it as an antidote against these different things in life? And one of the great things, the big things, is these emotions that we carry around with us. And one of the problems that many people have is that they don't really identify with these emotions in the way that that could really help them. For example, if we look at sadness, or what the Buddha called dukkha, or suffering. Last week I mentioned the word dukkha, that it was similar to a squeaky wheel on a cart, and that's a good way to describe dukkha. That we have a cart and we have the squeaky wheel, and it's just bothering us constantly, and after a while it really is, you know, a real agitation for us. It can be, anyway, if we let it be that. And so dukkha is basically suffering, or what in our modern terminology we could call stress. It's just a stress or a kind of an anxiety. And a lot of people don't really recognize that they're carrying around this anxiety, that they're carrying around this stress, because they're afraid to accept that it's there. And because the fact is that when we accept a negative emotions, or well, let's call it an unpleasant emotion, when we accept an unpleasant emotion, those two things can't exist at the same time. You know, when we say that, okay, I feel horrible about what somebody said to me earlier today, for example. And when we think about coming to a point where, okay, I can accept that, I'm over it, I'm just going to let it go, that's wonderful. And that's what we generally want to do. We want to process it, really take a look at these emotions. We're not trying to repress anything, of course. We're trying to really take a look at them and understand them, and then let them go. But the only way we can do that is to recognize them. I'm trying to see what you're looking at. Oh, okay. Walk underneath the camera if you can. We got something. Oh, okay. We have an animal outside that wants to get in. Okay. So there was an emotion right there. It's like, oh, my baby is outside, so I have to go out and get it. But when we accept these emotions and learn how to work with them and use them in our practice, they can really serve us well. There you go. Did you get her in?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And the fact is that when we're able to first understand that there's any kind of sadness or stress or suffering happening here, and that we are certain that we don't feel as if we're attached to this in some way, then we can let it go. And what I mean by that, and I've mentioned this in the past, but it's very important that we understand that we don't identify with these unpleasant emotions that we can have. Because a lot of people do. They feel as if it's a part of who they are. For example, if somebody said some harsh words to us, some things that we really didn't like, we could have a very almost feel as if it's our legitimate right to be able to carry that with us, rather than to get rid of it and to set it aside, because it's a part of our identity. We're identifying with that that emotion that we're carrying around with us, that suffering that we're actually carrying around. We're identifying with it. And so we want to be very, very careful that we aren't doing that with any emotions. We have to really pay attention to our inner states, our inner emotions, and what's happening. Otherwise we can carry these things around with us for years or decades. And the problems that we can run into with that is that of course they settle into different parts of our body, and they cause sickness or illness, from these stored up emotions, these emotions that are really unnecessary for us to carry around. The idea that how meditation can help us with this, this practice of meditation, is just simply asking ourselves, what is happening within the states, what these emotions that we might have. Sometimes they're very hard to identify. Sometimes we don't even allow them to register if we're trying to repress these emotions. So we want to be very, very careful that we do process these things. And that's one of the, anytime any kind of talks or any expressions or ideas or what to do with emotions comes up, it can be very confusing when people feel as if they feel as if they're getting the message that these emotions should be just dumped, forgot about and let go. Because letting go is one of the primary attributes, or part of the primary parts of the practice of meditation, is to be able to let go. But we definitely want to be able to process these emotions. It's very important to see why they're there, why they come up, especially if they're coming up on a continual basis. And we want to be able to see if we don't take care of them initially, when they come up again, we won't take care of them at that time either. So it's best to take a look at them and understand them, when they first come up. So when they come up again, we'll be able to recognize them. It's really quite that simple. We want to be able to really go within. So the practice of meditation allows us to do that. It allows us to really still the mind, still the body, and really kind of, do some investigative work within and see what's going within the body. I'm going to take a look and see if there's any comments here online or anything. Hi, Alice. Hi, Gary. Yeah, Gary says, I was trying to release my trapped emotions, but it's very difficult. Yeah. And that's where the meditation practice can come in, and particularly the type of meditation that we're going to be doing here. Again, the important thing is that we want to really be careful that you want to try to bring that up? Go ahead. Somebody said we have a glitch here, but we'll if you're having trouble seeing things online, let me know. Looks like it stopped and came back. I think we're okay. So we want to just be very careful that we don't identify with the emotions, and that's how trapped emotions can remain trapped. That we allow them to. It sounds harsh, but we are really, the only way that we can process an emotion is to know it's there and to be willing to accept it. Just imagine, for example, that in this acceptance, that we take this acceptance a step further, acceptance of the emotion, that is. And let's say that our partner continues to leave something upstairs. Oh, I left the keys upstairs again. And I'll use myself as an example. So I'm complaining, oh, she left the keys upstairs again. Like Terry left the keys upstairs. Now I have to get up and go upstairs and go get them. And that's fine. That's something that could, easily happen. A person could feel that way, like this emotionless, poor me, woe is me, oh, my life is so dreadful, I have to go upstairs. But when we think about how many people are not able to even get up off their chair and walk up the stairs, that can change it immediately. That changes our story. That changes our acceptance into being grateful, for our opportunity to be able to go up the stairs and to get these keys. But this is just an example, and we could refer that to anything. That first we want to identify the emotion, we want to accept it, and in the processing of that, if we can be grateful somehow that we have this emotion, that we're able to see it. My foot is stuck, and work with it that way. And we'll do that in our meditation here. It's about, we're done here. This is a 1 hour broadcast, and it's about 20 minutes into it. So we'll have a little bit, about a 35-minute meditation if we start in a moment here. I want to see if there's any other questions. Any questions from anybody here?
So, yeah, the gentleman mentioned about the stuck emotions.
Trapped emotions, yeah.
Trapped emotions. And isn't it just by continually addressing the breath and letting the thoughts go and feeling the feelings as sensations basically our Vipassana practice, and feeling that inside of us, kind of like, doesn't it allow us to release them much easier without having to like analyze it and kind of massage it? And I understand that we investigate it, but how
Yeah, yeah, we don't, because that cognition aspect of it isn't really a part of meditation. The wrestling, the aspect of wrestling with it mentally, but yeah, feeling it in the body. We actually want to know. We can pinpoint it without getting too analytical, too cognitive about it, like where it came from as far as, first of all, the senses. Was it something that we heard or something that we remembered? Is it something, what is it? We could be fearful of something that hasn't even happened yet. And so that's just something that we're creating. In essence, we're creating all of this, and as soon as we recognize that, it lessens it, a lot. We're creating all of this in the mind. But the first thing is to find out how it came about through the senses, and then where we feel it in the body, that feeling, like grief we feel in the chest, and anger we usually feel in the stomach. Fear is like a temperature kind of thing. It's kind of a shaking, nervous. I mean, not necessarily visible shaking, but like a nervousness, agitation. Physical agitation. So where do we feel it in the body? And meditation is a great time to do that. Because we're not moving around. We spend most of our time. It seems like we spend most of our lives, most of our time, disguising these things. We spend our time being, diverting our attention from our emotions. And that's why I think for a lot of people it's easy to just forget about them, but they're not forgotten about. They're still, it's like we still carry them around with us, like they get stuck. If somebody knows a lot about chakras, they can tell you, they will tell you, like maybe we could call it a chakra person, will tell you that each chakra holds these different emotions within the body. And or we could feel it within our aura, or if a person sees auras, they could see that there's a red aura around somebody, showing that they're angry, they're carrying around anger. And we can just kind of feel that as people. We can meet another person and feel like, oh, there's something going on with that person, some agitation or something isn't right, Like you guys walked in, and we looked at each other, and everybody looked good, I guess we kind of assumed that everybody was in a good position, and we acknowledged that, and I think it's truthful, If somebody came in and we could probably tell, and we maybe even had these discussions before where somebody just didn't seem right, just didn't seem right about them. Some kind of lingering emotion that was hanging on. And it's like with us the same way, like this is our opportunity, this meditation that we'll do right now is to be the private investigator of the mind and body. And meditation is basically mental floss for truth decay. I think you've heard me say that before. And that's what we're going to be doing here. We're going to find out what the truth is, through our practice. Is that flossing through the ears? Yeah. Mental floss for truth decay. Alice says, this week has been very emotional for me. My daughter has cancer. Grandson is in the hospital. He is drug addicted. It's so difficult for me. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear all that, Alice. This is I'm so glad that you're online with us, because usually when people, the hardest times to meditate and, you know, to use our spiritual practices when we need them the most. And that's why it's, I'm so happy to see you here with us right now, that this is the time where this practice, and you obviously understand this, that this practice can really help a human being out more than anything. And I've always said that if there was a cure-all for, if there was such thing as a cure-all for every disease, every problem, it would be meditation. And I know myself, I was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago. It was stage 4, and stage 3. Okay, thank you. And I did a lot of meditation, including a lot of visualization. I had a lot of help from other meditators. I know that. I wouldn't call it prayer, but I know I had a lot of people pulling for me, and I did a lot of practice for myself. I know particular people held me in light, so to speak, and sent me a lot of energy. I could feel it, you know, and had really a full recovery. Feel great, lots of energy and everything. So, meditation, you know, and the spiritual practices, the related modalities of meditation, like mindfulness and visualization, and you know, these types of practices, even self-hypnosis, hypnotherapy, that type of thing, are very, very, very powerful. So please remember that in your times of difficulty. So let's do this meditation. If everybody wants to get comfortable. I'm trying to get comfortable myself. This is a new chair here for me. And this getting comfortable might mean resting in a chair. We have some people in chairs here, and we have some people on cushions on the floor. And it all works perfectly well. We want to keep our back fairly straight. I often have to remind myself to keep my chin lifted a little bit. And I ask you to bring your attention to the breath. And of course, the reason we do this is because we want to become present, find this present moment awareness right away. Because in this presence, we still the mind and still the body, and we're much more liable to go in and go within and do some very, very good work, some good exploration, come with some new insights and some new understandings of ourselves and consequently others. I'd like to remind everybody as we focus on the breath that we are all one. If we use a wave as an analogy, the wave on top of the ocean, the wave is like, if we look at ourselves as a wave, it's very much what we could call the selfing, or call it ego. And the more we become acquainted with all of the ripples on the water, all the other waves, all the horizontal views that we see that there is a really deep connection with everything, with everyone. And so this ego really dissipates, and we realize that there is this very, very deep connection. And this happens whether we're online or whether we're alone, or if we feel alone, or whether we're with a group of people. We are all connected by many, many different ways. We could just simply call it energy, but we all share the same space, the same air, the same breath, the same chemicals within our bodies. And the more we realize this, the deeper we can go in these waters, and the deeper that we can go within ourselves. The ego would really like to, if it had its way, it would have us determine that everybody is different and separate from ourselves, and that we are separate from everyone else. But this simply is not true. We are all connected in many, many ways. Just the sound of my voice, there's many people hearing it, connecting us all together. Just the practice of meditation connects us together. Now, bringing your attention again to the breath, if it's not there already. Try to find the place in the body where you feel the breath the most, and use that as your meditation object. Tip of the nose, or the nostrils, or the windpipe, or someplace in the sinuses, or the throat, or the stomach. Whatever it might be, just focus on that area for a few moments. Gently breathing in and out. We're using the breath as a tool to set aside the past and the future, to calm the mind and body. So just allow the breath to move in and out of the body as it will. We're not manipulating the breath or trying to change it. Using it as a tool. Take a moment and ask yourself at this time if there's any prominent feelings within the body. We don't want to dwell on them. We're just kind of taking a brief look. Is there any pain within the body? Any contraction? Is there any pleasant feelings within the body? Do you feel the temperature? Do you feel the movement of the body when you breathe? And can you just simply feel the aliveness in your hands, for example? Now, when we become sensitive to the body like this, just imagine what is going on when our senses connect with something either in the outer world or through the cognition, through our thoughts, how the body reacts. Did you see any disturbing things today? Physically see anything that set off a mood for you, that triggered some kind of a pleasant or unpleasant mood, emotion? Did you hear something? Did somebody say something? Or did you hear some news? Maybe something on some media outlet, or maybe you heard some sirens that triggered something and reminded you of something. Anything that you heard today that set off an emotion. And did you smell or taste something recently that might have set off an emotion? Maybe even it set off a memory that triggered a thought that set off an emotion for you. And now also think back, is there something maybe that you touched? Something hard or something soft, something cold or hot, or something that was maybe rough in such a way that it reminded you of something of the past, or created some kind of fear perhaps? Something that you touched that sent off an emotion, that triggered something. And so these are the five primary senses of all animals. And there is the sixth sense of the mind. And if I asked you what kind of thoughts that you might have had within the past 24 hours that could have set off an emotion, this surely has to be true for everyone. We could not possibly remember all of the thoughts that we've had that triggered some kind of emotion for us. We're talking about small, minute emotions as well as longer lasting, lingering emotions. Some of these we don't remember, and some of them we might. The longer ones we probably are more apt to remember. The larger ones, the bigger dips. But we can see that all of these are ebbs and flows. They come and go. Even if we have a very dreadful situation, there always seems to be some way that we can pull out of it, at least temporarily. And so these are aspects of the mind when we become somehow distracted from our emotions that are bothering us, or that they eventually fade away. But again, it's always very, very healthy to read these emotions and to interpret them, to understand them, and to maybe even have insights based on the emotions. So when we're speaking of emotions, we're often speaking of negative or unpleasant emotions. And it's through the unpleasant emotions that we learn the most out of life. And when we look at these things in this way, we can actually become excited about negative emotions in a very positive way. So, without getting too cognitive, think back on a time in your life when you learned the most about yourself. And you'll likely find that it was a time of stress or sorrow, anxiety, in many cases, some deep hurt or pain. Where you learned how to maneuver through life. You learned much more about yourself than you previously knew. Possibly you learned about other people's actions. You might have learned about your limitlessness or your boundaries, how to uphold your boundaries. So anytime that we can become grateful for any of these emotions, we can accept them as they are. And anything that happens in our life, for that matter, if it's accepted, then it's much easier for it to flow by. This acceptance is really a genuine way of looking at something, understanding that it is what it is. Accepting something as it is means seeing the truth. Because it's already there, it's already happened. It doesn't mean it can't be rectified or fixed in some way. It means that it's simply there, and any kind of mental struggle against it is, for the most part, a waste of time. And our time would be better spent on perhaps solutions or moving on. So think about, very briefly, think of something that comes to mind when I mention a negative emotion that you experienced just recently. Something that perhaps is quite significant. And ask yourself if you can tell where you felt that within the body. What part of the body did you feel it in? And for many of us, we can pinpoint what part of the body we felt it in just by bringing the memory up again. Some of it might be actual memory of where we felt that sensation from that emotion. And the other opportunity might be that we feel it now by remembering the emotion itself, the situation. Where do you feel that within the body? And if it's still there, does it feel as if it can be moved? If you feel it in the body and you accept it as it is right now, what happens to that feeling? And if you can't accept it, ask yourself why. Ask yourself if perhaps you're identifying with it, that it's a part of you, that it's in your system. And then ask yourself how you might feel if it wasn't there. And again, if you feel it in your body and it's not moving, it's not changing, just imagine that you can expand it, bring it bigger than it is. Imagine it as if it's a shape like a ball or a sphere, a vortex or something. See if you can expand it, and if you can expand it, then you can certainly shrink it down. And then do that. Try shrinking it down. Just mentally visualize it getting smaller. Making it smaller and smaller. And behind doing this, just feel and know that there's a great deal of acceptance and that it's okay. And you're not trying to chase anything out of the body. You're trying to process, and if it wants to stay, you can allow it to stay. But for the most part, if there's acceptance and any amount of gratitude for the experience, the emotion will not be able to linger around. It will dissipate. And I'll briefly check and see if there's any other areas of the body where you might feel some residue from any emotions. Could be from way, way back in the past. Could be recent. Is there anything that you've been holding on to that you might be just discovering right now? And in this holding on, do you feel that it's necessary to do so? Can it be let go of? And again, why is this emotion being held within the body? And also check the area of the mind. Many people feel as if the emotions are stuck and held within the mind itself. And see if you can go in a little bit deeper and find it. Understand why it's there, how it feels. What purpose might it serve? Does it serve any purpose at all? And remember, these emotions can be very tricky. They can change texture and feel. And if you have found something within the body or mind related to any emotions, through acceptance and gratitude for it being there, for it to serve you in whatever way it was meant to serve you, you can be thankful for it and allow it to leave if that's what it's meant to do. And bring your attention back to the breath. And see if you can come back to that area of the breath where you started with, where you felt the breath the most. Your meditation object. And just rest there for a few moments. And see how it feels within the body. Does it feel lighter? Does giving your emotions the acceptance that they most likely want and need, does that help them dissipate? Does that help them change? Focusing on the breath. Take a little deeper than normal inhalation, bringing some energy into the body. And gently exhaling. Another nice deep inhalation. Still focusing on your meditation object where you feel the breath. Exhale, and another nice deeper than normal inhalation of the breath. And just accepting, the experience of this meditation in general. As you exhale, and if you like, you can gently open your eyes. Bring yourself back to your room, wherever you might be. The point is that acceptance and negativity can't survive in the same area. When we accept any kind of negativity within the mind or body, it doesn't like that. It doesn't understand it, and generally it will dissipate if that's what it's meant to do. And if it's not meant to do that, then it's hanging and lingering for a reason. It's hard to say that we should force anything, especially even emotions within negative emotions or unpleasant emotions within the body, that we should try to force them away, They have to, it's like everything has to be processed in its own time. Everything has to be, has to live its life, before it changes into, I don't really believe in a beginning or end or a life or death. I just believe that everything changes. And that's true with the emotions too. Sometimes they feel like they linger and they stay within the body. We've all experienced short little emotions that come up, like we get ticked off at somebody and then it's done, or whatever it might be. It's angry at a situation and then we realize that it was a mistake we made and it's just, oh, okay, never mind, my fault, I'm sorry, and then it's done. So there's any flavor of emotions, any kind of texture, but the point is that some of them linger and some of them don't. And some of them linger from years and years and years back. And many, through quantum physics and many other sciences, we could say they are seeing that this is what causes our diseases, our difficulties, with the body, stiffness, inflammation, all sorts of problems. Yeah, we're running over time here a little bit. I know that's not a sin or anything on Insight Timer, but I want to respect everybody's time. And I will remind everybody that I'll be here next Wednesday. Whether it'll be live like this, or whether it be back in my office, I don't know. We'll talk about it here. And but as far as everybody online, every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Thank you so much for being here. Love you all. And again, thank you for the donations. Those of you that donated, much appreciated. So thank you. Good night.